Sorry, I just started there.
That's okay. I just kind of we started the tradition of a land acknowledgement in the last year here, and we have been modifying it, but keeping it as a reminder to us that as historic commissioners, part of our role is to plan for all people who have lived on the area of Springfield, and not just focus on the kind of colonized history that we have been focusing a lot of our attention on in the past. So that is something that we've kind of set as a goal. So I always keep that land acknowledgement at the front of our meeting to remind us that that is something that we are striving to do. And very excited to have a couple new members with us tonight. We're going to do some larger welcomes, I think, and introductions here in a little bit, but I'm going to just do a roll call to start the meeting and jump right into the agenda. And I think I'll add in some welcoming after public comment, because we do have public comment today. So on that note, I will do my best to try to get anybody. Let me know if I missed anybody. Commissioner Donovan.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
I will be driving, so whenever you want to, I have to pull over and hit the unmute.
Oh, sorry, we
But
won't
no,
bother
but
you.
that'll work fine. It'll work fine. Just, pretend if I was on Mars, it would take like 35 minutes, wouldn't it, or something? So, anyway, so yes, I'm here, and I'll just quickly, I've been on the commission, I think 3 years, and happy to do a part and so forth.
Okay, thank you so much, Tom. Kirk. Commissioner Fribley. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm Jenna Fribley, local architect, historic commissioner, and I've been on it, I don't know how many years, 4 or something. So
Great, thank you. Commissioner Josephson.
Here, I've been on for a little over 2 years now. I'm a planning specialist commissioner.
Great. And I am currently serving as chair. I am Christina Bowe. I've been on the commission for about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. I think my term ends next year. And then we have a couple commissioners who are not here today. And we have 2 new members who I believe become official members at the start of January. And or at least voting members, so you are official members already. So if you want to state your name really briefly so we can all know who you are.
Selene Swenson Harris.
My name is Adam Howard.
Hi, welcome. So today we have, I'm gonna jump right into sharing my screen. Oh, it says I can't share the screen.
I'll stop. Should be able to now.
Okay. All right, can you see the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so for today, we have public comment, historic land use application review. That should be brief. And then I'd like to kind of combine those 2 items. They're already kind of duplicated there. So the work plan review and discussion on subcommittees is going to be the primary thing to talk about today and probably next month a little bit too. And then we have a few next steps and follow-up items. And then tonight there is a potential social if anybody is interested down at the public house. I've got a couple sick kids at home. Unfortunately, won't be able to go, but we can talk more about that as we get forward on the meeting. So I want to jump right into public comment. I'm trying to keep us moving along here. we have one person with us, Eric Adams from Willamette. So I asked Eric to join us again. He joined us, I don't know, it was probably a year ago. Eric, is that right?
Yep,
Yeah.
feels about right, yeah.
He joined us about a year ago, I think, with the interest of doing some historic research on the Heritage House. We incorporated that into our work plan and then received the CLG grant based on some of the concepts of what we wanted to do on our work plan. And so moving forward, and Eric moving forward on that work, and us having received the grant now, we discovered that there was some discrepancy in what the grant requirements were and what the proposed project was for the Heritage House. So I kind of made them aware that in order to meet the grant requirements, they have to do a complete full RLS, which is a reconnaissance level survey. I think I mentioned that last month. And so Eric's been doing some research on what that entails and what that includes, and thinking some pros and cons of whether or not the district's going to be doing that. So I won't say any more, Eric, but I just wanted to provide a little context for why you're here, and a little reminder for what has happened so far. And I'll let you take the stage.
Great, thanks, Christina. So good evening, everyone. Eric Adams, I'm the Planning, Parks and Facilities Director at Willamette. And as Christina mentioned, just wanted to come back to you this evening and talk a little bit about where we're at with hopefully being able to move forward in completing a architectural, historic significance and structural assessment of the Great Jaqua House, otherwise known as the Heritage House, which Willamette co-owns with the city of Springfield. So when we came to you, feels like it was probably about a year ago, given the co-ownership of the property in the house with the city, we had asked the commission to consider providing funding to support having that assessment completed. And at the time, commission was really gracious and supported allocating up to $1,000, I believe it was, toward that overall cost of doing the assessment. At that time, we had a rough ballpark estimate from our consultant of about $15,000. And then subsequently, as Christina mentioned, learning about the requirements of the grant through SHPO, became aware that we would need to do that reconnaissance level survey or intensive level survey to comply with the program. It's actually a benefit. We see it as a benefit to have to go to that next step, because it'll really give us a complete picture and understanding of how eligible the structure would be to receive designation at the national level as a registered property. That is something that we were already wanting to get a better understanding of as part of doing this assessment. So it's right in line with overall goals for the project, but of course it comes with an additional level of effort from our consultant and an additional expense. And so based on that requirement, we had the consultant update their proposal and fee. And so doing that survey will require an additional $3,000 to complete that overall. So my understanding is that in total that would bring to bring the request from the city of $4,000, which is, I believe, the total amount of the grant. So we're requesting that support from the Historic Commission this evening. Again, I think it's something that definitely is value to both Willamette and the city and the community overall, just given the historic and other significance of the Great Jaqua property and its context within the story of Springfield overall. So happy to answer any questions that you may have about that request. I've got the copy of the proposal up here that I can review in any detail, but otherwise we're hoping to be able to move forward with conducting the assessment starting this spring.
Thanks, Eric. Any questions for Eric from the commission? Brian?
To clarify, are Willamette Lane asking for any additional funds for this, and if so, how much?
So we're asking for the additional $3,000 to complete the RLS. So in addition to the $1,000 that was already earmarked, it would be bring our total request to 4,000.
And we don't have to vote or provide a response to him right now, but if anybody has any other clarification questions, Jenna?
And how does that fit into the monies that we have left?
That's the main topic for our meeting today, which is part of why I told Eric it would be good for him to get on the agenda to talk to us about it today, since we're going to be talking about it already. So we'll take a look at that. Anything else related to the project at the Heritage House? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Take care.
you too. All right. So we can get into the weeds, like I said, a little bit about what projects we're taking on and where we're at budget wise. That's kind of what I want to focus on today a little bit. And then there's going to be some question marks. And so hopefully we can come back next month and just kind of find it, like complete those question marks so that we have a finalized work plan a little bit going into the new year. Yeah, as you all know, I work for Willamette Lane, so I've been trying to stay out of it. So every time that something comes up, I'll have Eric kind of represent Willamette Lane. And I'm trying to just facilitate that conversation. I'm going to withdraw myself from voting or opinions or influences on the matter. It's up to you all. It's totally okay. Let's move along on the agenda and we'll come back to that topic. Actually, let's divert from the agenda slightly for just a moment. The 4:45 was our public comments. We're a little ahead of schedule. So I wanted to, now that Eric's been relieved, I wanted to just do, I don't know, a quick kind of get to know you for the new folks, if possible, if you can bear with me a little bit. If anybody would be willing to share something about your experience, maybe with the commission that has been exciting to you or something that you're excited about for being on the commission. That would be maybe nice to share. And for new members, if you're willing to, maybe share something that you would be interested in bringing to the commission or taking on or exploring more as a part of the commission. So if anybody wants to go, jump right in. Jenna's raising her hand already. Nice job, Jenna. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm excited that we finally pulled off some Heritage Awards after many years of kind of slowly getting that moving. And I don't know how much you want to go into this, but I'm also excited to hopefully, maybe next grant cycle or something, expand this medallion situation that we created for the Heritage Awards, which everyone knows I had sort of a, maybe not ulterior motive, but a expanded motive for the medallions that not only will they be great for the awards, but that in the future we could create a whole medallion program for downtown that, it's not just the awards themselves, but we could make markers for any heritage sites, regardless of an award, just like we could have like more of a marker program that would expand on this, including landscape elements, trees, etc. So anyhow.
Awesome. That's perfect. Brian?
Sure. I think, so for me, the thing I've enjoyed the most has been really getting to know Springfield. I think Springfield, it has this just rich history that comes out in all these properties and that comes out in the history that we review, and that that probably I would not have come across otherwise. And so that's probably been my favorite part about the commission.
Charlotte.
I have particularly enjoyed just collaborating with this group on a bunch of different projects. It's nice to have kind of a team approach to advocating for historic preservation in this community. And in particular, I've really enjoyed that the commission has invested in continuing education for all commissioners so that we just keep learning from each other and from Springfield's history and just keep on kind of building momentum and doing new things, like the Heritage Award program that Jenna mentioned is probably the most exciting of the new things.
So, well, we won't make the new people go quite yet. Oh, no.
Yeah, no,
Go ahead.
yeah,
Oh, Kurt, go ahead.
yeah, I could tell you, I've learned a lot that I never knew before, and I guess that's important. If you'd asked me 3 years ago where the Washburn district is, I'd have said, I have no idea. And so that's good. And I never knew that bridge that's out there by it's the old railroad bridge, it's the oldest bridge in Oregon and stuff. So anyway, I've certainly learned new things, and that's great. When you join a commission, that's probably at least a third of what is important. So
Great, thanks.
I have much better feeling for Springfield than I did before. So
Excellent. For me, I would say it's probably seeing a shift in the commission from focusing on, we do focus a lot on the application review process and historic structures. And we always have, but now we are branching out and doing more exciting things. So that ties into the awards program, but there's a lot of really exciting ideas I think this group has come up with, and it's fun to do the brainstorming and visioning and thinking about what we could do as far as outreach, education, increasing public awareness. Those things are really exciting to me too. So looking forward to that. Celine and Adam, do either of you have something, or Tom, if you want to chime in too?
I would piggyback on what you said about not just focusing on the land use review side of things, because a lot of people, and being on that side of it, I hear just how hard it is to, make a modification to a home in the historic district, but to also focus on the side that celebrates that history through the awards program and, just the recognition that a landmark or, whatever it may be, to apply that so that people see that it's more than just, code that you need to comply with. It's a real historic object that we are celebrating and preserving and all of that. So I think it's really cool to be, at least as staff liaison, on the other side of the fence from the development side.
So
I'd be happy to share a little bit about why I'm interested in being involved. I am really excited about the outreach component and the education component and learning more about our history as a city. I also, I'm excited to learn more about the opportunities we have to make sure that review process is accessible and understandable to folks who are going through it. And, to ensure that people have a clear understanding of what they need to do, have a clear understanding of what our role is, and just to make sure, our city is welcoming to people and helping them to be able to participate in the process.
My name is Adam Howard. Also currently a member of the Springfield History Museum Committee. So I've gotten to work with Jenna quite a bit, and I certainly understand the importance of the Heritage Awards. I think it's a great opportunity to collaborate with the museum, with the History Museum Committee, as well as the Historic Commission. So certainly look forward to doing that in the future. And I think there's a lot of great opportunities to pursue with respect to that. I am interested in historic house museums. There's something that I'm passionate about, and I like historic architecture too. And I'm not gonna lie, if there's an opportunity to explore educational outreach with respect to that, that's certainly something that I'd be interested in.
Great. yeah, we'll be talking more about that today too, our budget and what we're gonna use it for. So welcome, both of you. Really glad to have some new members. We wish that we had this really shiny and polished handbook to hand you because we've been talking about it, or I've been talking about doing it. Like I put it on my own plate to try to pull it together, and it's not totally there, but we have something that's close and better than we've ever had, which is a Springfield Oregon Speaks website that has a lot of links in there of our work plan, kind of commissioner. Some of the commissioners may not even be aware, but I'm actually going to share my screen really quick just to give you the preview of down here at the bottom of Springfield Oregon Speaks. If you scroll to the bottom, there is a for historic commissioners link. So if you haven't gone there before, anybody on the commission, this is a great place that has some of the content that would go in a handbook if we had one, and starting to collect and organize that information in a way that's accessible for all of us. So that should be helpful information to get. We also have the camp report that was done from the somebody help me, the national, was it the national, I always forget the acronym. What was the group? National Alliance of Historic Commissions.
Historic commissions.
Yes, thank you. Came and did a large training for us last year, and we have a report from them on that specific to Springfield. So that would be another great thing to add on to this list, but also email out to you potentially so you can start to review and become familiar with some of our documents. But don't hesitate to reach out to me or anybody if you're if you have any questions or if it's confusing process for you. We will happily help. So let's see. Trying to find my agenda now. I shared my screen and I lost it. All right. So I have one update on the note of new membership. We have Leslie McLeese, Commissioner Leslie McLeese is resigned from the commission for personal reasons. And so she hopefully will be joining us again someday, but she is no longer going to be with us on the commission. So she was the leader of one of our subcommittees, the education and outreach. And so for that reason, for the time being, I think I'm just putting a pause on the subcommittee work or the structure of the subcommittees while we have new members coming in. And we don't have leadership for one of them, and I'm kind of leaving the other one that is kind of essentially ends up being our main meeting anyways. And so at least for the next few months, I think it might be worthwhile to have us all combined as we get through the holidays and bring new members on board and kind of think about how we want to approach the next year in our projects. It might be helpful to have us all together anyway. So, so that is that.
Question.
Yes, Tom.
Since we were having alternating meetings for subcommittees, will we just run them all as regular work sessions then?
That's what I'm thinking. Is that okay with you?
Oh, yeah, I just want to make sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what we were doing before we did the subcommittees, and the idea of adding in every other month doing the subcommittee meeting was to reduce our meeting requirement in part for city staff. So that the city staff didn't have to attend all of them, but in our subcommittees, we could kind of run them ourselves. But it hasn't really worked that way for you. Tom, sorry. But we may go back to that. I just want to kind of reassess with the group and see what people want to do. And then now that we've tried it a little bit, how they're feeling about it and what might work. So on that note, bring us back to our work plan, which the final work plan is updated on the Springfield Oregon Speaks page. So I'm going to bring that up and just kind of run through for the all of our sakes, but also for the new commissioners, just to become familiar with what we stated in 2022. Of course, this was our first time ever creating a work plan for this group. And so we're trying to create a little more organization in the effort of being a little more organized and thoughtful and strategic in what we are working on. We have this new work plan, and I want to make sure now that we are entering into 2023, I would like to revisit, refresh everybody what's on there. And then at the end, spend a little bit of time looking at the budget and where we're at with all of those items, where our question marks are. And then if we can get to a little discussion on what we want to focus on in the next 6 months. And that may be a discussion that has to happen next month. But we'll do what we can. So for the new members, we have 3 subcommittees that have been working under the commission for the last 6 months or so since we kind of adopted this plan. And we have the awards subcommittee that is like a co-subcommittee between the Springfield History Museum and the Historic Commission. And so that award program, this was the first year that program was implemented, as you heard, and Jenna is the chair of that subcommittee. It was a very successful subcommittee this year, and I'm excited to see that happen again next year. The Resource and Development Subcommittee is focusing on basically budget and managing of projects, donations, and funds. The CLG grant that we get a CLG grant from the state on an 18-month cycle. So actually, I think it's like a 2-year cycle, but there's like 18 months where those funds are available. And then there's kind of a 6-month off time when you're reapplying and waiting for the new funds to become active. So we are currently about a year into our CLG funds, and we have about 6 months left in our last grant, and then we'll be going back out, and those new funds would become available, I think, April or May of 2024 for the next cycle. So the Resource Development Committee, the idea of that is we have another new thing that we did, just as background, is we hired a consultant to help us provide technical guidance during application reviews, so that we as commissioners don't have to provide all the technical expertise necessarily. And she's been great at teaching us along the way, so she can attend meetings, write a report on what her recommendations are, and we can use that to guide our recommendations to the city of Springfield. So we can talk more about that process with you as we go forward, and we have an application to look at. But we have been utilizing 5-4 Architecture as a consultant for that, and we still have funds available to use her through the rest of our grant cycle. And so the Resource Development Committee is kind of overseeing, like, making sure that those funds are all allocated properly. And if there is a project that we need additional funding for, the Resource Development Committee could do research on grants that could be used for match to our CLG funds. And we do have a couple opportunities for that potentially coming up. The Outreach and Education Subcommittee. These should say subcommittee, not committee. Sorry. This is what happens when one person writes a report quickly. The Outreach and Education Subcommittee is pretty straightforward, like it sounds. There's a whole list of projects, and so I'll run through those kind of down below that we've prioritized for the time being. Some of them have been on our list of things to do for a really long time, since some of us have, even before any of us have been on the commission. And so we're trying to complete something so that we can move forward on other things that are of interest, and we've included some ideas for other projects as well as we go forward. So I'll come back to this budget part, but things on our plans right now is just general oversight of the commission. So there's the general upkeep of commission agendas, socials, that kind of thing each year, maintaining a work plan. Then there's our historic applications that come in, and this is where we allocate some funds. I think we have about $175,000 1,750 remaining to support 5-4 architecture for our historic application review process. A big task, like I said, that has not been completed yet is a actual handbook and a creation of some bylaws and code of conduct for the commission. We have made some progress. As I said, it's on those, some of those documents are on Springfield Ordinance Breaks, but it hasn't been compiled into official handbook yet. And that is a huge, I'm not going to underplay that. Like I can say, that was a lot of work to get to where we've been at so far. So I think we made a lot of progress there, even though we don't have a complete handbook yet. The phase 1 of the reconnaissance level survey. So a reconnaissance level survey is a survey of the Washburn Historic District. It's a high level survey that basically they go through the district and document the properties on there within the district. You're supposed to update it, I think, on a 10-year or so basis, and I don't think it has ever been updated since, or some of the properties at least haven't been updated since the district was started, and I can't remember what year that was.
87.
87. Thank you. So they're outdated, and that is one of those projects that has been on the list for a long time. We've got a few policy things that are in the works. So there's the ADU, allowance of ADUs in the historic district, that has been a change that has come our way in the last year, as well as some code requirements that would allow increased density in the medium density residential, or so we potentially have some more infill coming into the Washburn district, which is for some historic districts a very large concern. I think a good starting point for us is just kind of it's good for us to be aware of what's there and what it is right now, and have accurate recording and reporting for us to be able to look back and see for maintenance of the historic district, so that we can continue to become eligible as a historic district going forward and not compromise our eligibility for that. So this project would mean hiring a consultant, basically. We had an initial cost estimate from a consultant for this. That guide informed our budget. We were going to do 2 phases and then overlap them on the grant cycle so that the work would be somewhat continuous. But since we adopted this plan and actually got our funds, that consultant is no longer in the state. And so we'll hopefully have some updates. Actually, Charlotte, if you have any updates for us, this might be a good time to do it.
Unfortunately, I don't have a good update. I have connected with our the 2 contractors that seem the most likely, but I'd like to get some more information from them so we have a clear sense of the 2 opportunities.
Okay, that's great. And as long as we're still making progress on that, then thank you for helping. I did reach out to, for those who weren't here, there was one firm that I reached out to after I found out our initial architect is no longer in town or regionally available. There was a firm in Portland that she connected me with, and their quote was double basically what the initial quote was. And so that kind of blew our entire award budget. So that's one thing that we kind of have flagged, is depending what we find out from Charlotte and what our expenses are going to be there. We'll have to make a hard decision there. Are we going to go out for a grant? What's our strategy going to be? Are we going to just put that one aside and ask for money next time, like the full allotted amount? I just want to have more conversation about that. But I'll keep rolling through other things so people have a full picture before we have that discussion. The awards committee. So implementing the Springfield Heritage Awards. There's 2 different award categories for this. Like I said, it was our first year. It was pretty successful, and it was very low cost for us. We contributed, or we have available, $1,000 from that budget. I don't know, Tom's looking into right now how much has actually been billed. Do you have any info on that yet, Tom? No.
No, I do not.
Okay, so that might be another thing next month, that once we get some of those, we can look at. how much has been spent. Jenna, do you have a sense for how much we've spent? Jenna still with us?
It's funny because I was just reminding myself that I haven't submitted a reimbursement request earlier
suspected.
today. So I have like the cost of the actual medallions, basically, was the big cost. And it was in my email today. I was digging it up. It was basically $1,011.75. Yeah. So that was most of our cost.
Okay. Well, that's great. So this is a matching contribution. I think the museum committee was gonna donate $500 or $250 or something. I can't remember now how much they said.
Yeah, I've something like that.
So
Yeah.
I guess the bottom line is we have enough money
Yeah.
between the two of us to cover that, and we'll just need to figure out if we have any extra money from this time. And if we do, we might want to just I don't know if we can use any of that to be proactive for the next grant cycle. Oh, we have another grant cycle that we might need awards for before the end of this grant cycle. So, okay, more coming on that. So, as far as this goes, Jenna, it sounds like we have another awards subcommittee meeting starting up here pretty soon. And I'm guessing one of those things on the agenda for that will be whether or not we're gonna go out for awards this spring, or has that been decided?
Nope, we haven't touched base about it yet. So,
Okay,
I mean, the goal is to do it in May during Historic Preservation Month. But it does feel very soon already.
I know.
But on the other hand, by May, it'll feel long ago, right? Because we just did it, but May is a while away. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's not like there aren't plenty of worthy projects. And since we just got the word out, maybe we'll get lots of applications for the next round.
Yeah, that would be great. And maybe people who just applied that still want to apply again, they could.
Yeah, or who just didn't get their application.
Yeah.
Like there were a lot of people that were like, ooh, and then there was like, oh, I just couldn't get it,
Yeah.
together. So
Totally. All right, so there is the question mark of, we have $1,000 in there. So we need to know how much is coming from. Do you think by the next meeting you could help us figure out how much is coming from the commission?
yeah, I can circle back with the museum and get all the receipts pulled together and all of
Okay.
that.
Or we can talk about it at the subcommittee meeting. I think we have it in the notes of how much they said they'd be willing to pay in that spreadsheet you created.
I agree.
That shouldn't be too hard, hopefully. And then we can figure out next month what we're gonna do with that extra $250 or whatever it ends up being. All right, so then the Resource Development Committee, we have this category. This is what Eric was here for, of supporting local preservation efforts. And so our work plan kept it very broad. It was like, if there is a landowner who wants to do research that would lead towards a designation or listing it on the National Register, we want to be supportive of that, because that just helps us as a historic district like have more resources within Springfield that we can speak to. So we wanted to support those efforts. Another form of us trying to move more towards positive reinforcement, positive energy. So providing support in the areas that we want to see more activity. We had a couple projects in mind, and so we knew that there was some interest in the Heritage House. There was a couple other, the school administrative building, and I feel like there was one other possibility that was maybe mentioned. Maybe it was the
Bridge.
for the first African American church in Glenwood was mentioned, and I think that Melissa had put that in. And then somebody else had mentioned maybe the Bratton House, or the Bratton, not the house, but the school. might be one if the school district was ever interested. And so we have put out requests to the school district before to see if they would be interested, and never gotten a response from them. But if they were, if they changed their mind or showed interest, we would be able to use funds from this section towards supporting those efforts. So in the process, what we learned under this category, and we'll continue to refine these as we go forward so that we can be more in line with what the CLG grant requirements are. But in order to give people money, we can't be like a granting agency and just take our grant funds and then give them out to somebody else who wants money. We have to basically provide them a product for that. And so in this instance, the product that they'd be looking for research would be a RLS, a reconnaissance level survey, or an ILS, which is an intensive level survey, which might be more focused on one structure. And so, yeah, so now it's again, another thing that we're going to have to kind of come to grasp with in our grant. We have $4,000. We don't have anybody that has, we haven't promoted this widely. It's somewhat of a new thing that a new function for us as a commission. We also haven't, other than Eric coming, nobody's come to speak to us directly about requesting those funds. So it'll be up to the commission what we want to do. Right now we have $4,000 designated for that item. Education and outreach. There's a lot of ideas in this section. Right now we have a standing item in our agenda always for training and education, as we talked about. So when we initially submitted this grant, we had no money in training and education, because in our last grant cycle, we put almost our entire grant towards education and training, and we paid $8,000, I think, for the Charlotte.
Preservation, National Council of Preservation Commissions.
Thank you.
CPC.
Yes, so we put most of our budget towards having them come out and provide this very customized intensive training and write us a report, which was great. And so we can use that document to kind of continually inform and guide our work going forward. But we, generally speaking, will always have some money available for training. So I think this says 3,500, but that is not true. I'm sorry, it's only supposed to be $1,500 there right now. One thing that we have found, or I have experienced being on the commission, is that we always put money in there and people tend to not use it, and it gets to be hard. So the idea is having a subcommittee manage these, is somebody hopefully would take on organizing, and I know that Leslie started this, but organizing what conferences are available year round, and kind of providing information about where those are generally located, where to go to learn more, and then how much approximately those might cost. So in the past, we've paid for, I think, flight, lodging, attending a conference. In the last few years, everything's been virtual, and so it's been really easy, and we've been able to attend free ones, or attend, pay the, it's just several $100s really to do like a week-long conference virtually. It ends up being much more affordable. So it makes sense right now to reduce that budget a little bit from what we've had in the past, just because we've had so much recent training, but also because you can do so many things virtually for pretty affordably right now. So depending on people's interests, I think the commission would be open to considering otherwise, but the idea was a subcommittee would kind of create a plan for how people would request those funds, how we do that equitably among commissioners. And honestly, again, it always comes down to, we have these extra funds. Is anybody going to go to training? Please go. So it benefits all of us if people go to trainings. It's a time commitment, and most of us work, and it's hard. So it's hard to balance all that. And that's understandable. So yeah. So Adam, if you're excited about it and you're a new commissioner, I think probably there's a lot of support there for you or Celine if you're interested in attending some of those, because it increases your exposure and connections and seeing what other people are doing, and it's just going to make the commission stronger. So definitely do your own research too and see if you find anything good. Another project on here that was completed, but not how it was planned, is the postcard mailing. And so Jenna designed these beautiful postcards with information about the Washburn district on there to increase some awareness of them. And we were going to mail them out. We had $1,500 designated to do a mailing to everybody in the Washburn district, and then also to realtors, so that they could be informed about the Washburn district as well. And Jenna ended up figuring out how to get them included in the Eugene magazine distribution. And so do we have any, where are we at with this, Jenna? Do we need to mail anything out, do you think, at this point?
I mean, we did the original big batch mailer earlier this year, which went to all the realtors and it went to all the residents. We had budgeted for 2 years of mailings.
That's right.
And I blew our stash of second year mailing cards on the inserts in the magazine. So they put 4,000, or they put them in 4,000 copies of the magazine that went out, which is awesome. But it means we don't have a lot left. But also it means we reached a really broad audience, which is great. So I would say that our mission is accomplished, you know, for the, you know, distributing of information. But it is useful to have extras on hand to, you know, have at all the little coffee shops and places around town. And I know they have copies of them at the museum and at City Hall. And, you know, it's part of the intent is to help people either who currently live in the Washburn or who are looking maybe to become a resident of the Washburn to both appreciate what they have, but also recognize that they are signing up to be stewards of this thing, and that there's information and resources available on where to find those things. But also then it's a crowd pleaser of just like having a map also with like the walking tour locations on it. So we can certainly make more, but I don't think we have enough now to do another mailing for this next year. But we could also just skip a cycle of mailing and do, you know, wait for the next grant cycle. So. Or we can use whatever's left in the budget to just order some more postcards.
Do you remember approximately how much the first mailing was?
That is a number I will have to dig out of our email exchanges.
Or, I mean, if you've already it's already been reimbursed from the grant, right?
Yeah, I didn't pay for any of that. I mean, the city tackled the actual physical mailing and the postage and the envelope stuffing and all of that.
Yeah, so when Tom goes through and kind of gets like the actual expenditures that have been billed towards our budget, it should show in that. So hopefully by next month, we'll be able to, you don't have to worry about it.
And I've got a pretty sizable stack in my office as well. That helps.
Great.
I think we ordered 10,000 in our last batch. For
And we almost are through them. That's
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so we do have some progress. This is great. One of the things I'm hoping as we pause here for a moment is that this is helping me think about one of the things that was listed in here is it would be great to go to the council at the end of the year, beginning of the year at some point during public comment and be like, we have this work plan we've been working off of. In the last year, we've accomplished A, B, C, D, and just kind of gain some awareness about what we've done, what we've accomplished, kind of like a end of year review progress report for the council, and then see if they have any feedback. Or maybe state like, these are our goals for the next year and see, you know, just kind of let them know that that's where we're at and what's going on. So that will be a good one to be able to report on. We actually have made some progress there. So we've made progress on, we haven't done any training, but we've done the education postcards. We've done the awards program, which was huge. I would like to get some numbers around how many applications we reviewed, which wasn't many. We probably had, I don't know, 3 or 4 in the last year. And we have started to make progress on, we made our first work plan. I think we can say that is a huge success. So I feel proud of us. So other projects, just going to throw these out here for thought. Once we get into the new year, we'll probably want to update and remove items potentially that we've completed, or downplay those and make some space for some others potentially. So here are some things that we had thought about in the past. The code update project. So City of Springfield's updating their code right now, and that could impact the development code for the Washburn overlay in the Washburn district. And so we wanted to be proactive and potentially bring some expertise in to guide us on what would be some best practices for code revisions, and just kind of give us an assessment on what we have, what other communities are doing, things we might want to consider going into that. I don't know where the city is at with that and how much of a role we'll get to play in it. Tom, do you have any updates on that by any chance?
I don't, I know, the CFEC stuff that's going on with the climate friendly and equitable communities. That's largely looking at parking. So, it would have some of an impact on the historic district, but it's really, we wouldn't be able to enforce any parking standards or have a requirement for parking standards as I understand it. And then there's the active middle housing stuff that's bringing in all the infill to the district.
Right. Okay. Well, I think that Mark Rust was leading that code revision project, and they were trying to hire new staff to come in and take that project on and implement the second phase, but it has been put on hold until I'm assuming it's not you, Tom, taking that on.
I can talk to him about it though and see where
Yeah,
things.
it's nice to just keep asking him. It's one of those things where I feel I have like a subtle fear in the back of my head that I'm gonna come to a meeting one day and find out that historic the district historic district is being looked at next week, and I'm not ready. I haven't gotten anybody ready yet. So it sounded like it was going to be a ways off, and they didn't even have anybody starting that process for a while, which is why we didn't fund it this grant cycle.
I'm always up for a good code revision and guidelines update, so.
All right, Brian's excited. That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we'll definitely utilize you for that. Other one that comes up a lot that we talk about wanting to do is the untold stories. And so this ties into the Kalapuya history for the area, and or other things that have been mentioned, is looking at other BIPOC kind of stories that don't get mentioned traditionally in our records. So looking at Black history or the Latinx community, and what we could maybe help promote from an outreach and engagement, or help fund. We have had historic context statements written for our region. There's somebody coming. Okay. We have had historic context statements written for Springfield just in general that do talk a little bit about Kalapuya settlement, pre-colonial settlement, or sorry, pre-colonial history, but not specifically or in detail. The majority of that context statement is post-colonial history. And then there's context statement focusing on lumber history, which is a very rich history for what currently exists still in Springfield. But we don't have the documentation or the research done for us to be able to have other stories being told in our community. And so that was one thing we talked about, is like, can we use some of our funds to help create documentation of those stories or history so that we can better share that information with the community. And there's the Historic Trees Project, and that ties a little bit into the awards program. We've been looking for different opportunities to feature and mark some of the historic trees in our area, celebrate them, whether it be through simple way of like with an award. It's hard to remove a tree that has an award on it. I keep telling people, but there might be other more official protections or like, you know, city tree project, heritage projects that the city, we could partner with the city and work on. And so I think the first step of that is documenting what's there, what we have. And so one of the things was maybe as part of our reconnaissance level survey for the historic district, or alongside that, we might fund, you know, kind of a tree assessment for where our historic trees are in the region. And I think Willamette Lane would be a good group to potentially partner with, because that could go well potentially with the parks too, looking at our parks and what historic trees we might have in our parks and green spaces in the city. Updating and reviving walking tours was another one. And so Leslie had actually started to try to do some of this as well. She had found a U of O student or a couple that were interested in potentially converting our walking tours into like a Esri story map. And so people could do like an online walk and visit some of our sites, which I think would be awesome. And that's still something that could be very feasibly done by an intern or volunteer. And then a big one is Springfield Historic Preservation Plan, which would be a plan document that would kind of look at Springfield as a whole. Right now, we're very Washburn centric, and we don't have a lot of documentation or knowledge of what else is in Springfield that we should be working towards preserving. And so we do know a little bit. There's a few buildings that we are very aware of, and there's a couple listed sites. There's couple historic landmarks for the city of Springfield, but it would be great to do a big picture look at Springfield, assess what's there, and then help us prioritize, you know, maybe additional context statements or research or RLSs or even historic districts that we might want to help establish in the future in Springfield to protect some of those.
Christina, can I jump in on a couple of your previous ones? So
Yeah.
the walking tour, we definitely, obviously, it would be great to update our stuff, you know, make a better, newer, shinier,
Yeah.
more informed document for that. Maybe even like, you know, with some technology links. But prior to that effort, I know Maddie reached out from the History Museum that they are out of the walking tour brochures. And it might be worth just printing at least one small batch, medium-sized batch of those in the meantime. You know, they're not, I'm not sure where they have had them printed in the past, but they're not a like high tech, you know, shiny paper kind of situation. So I don't think they're terribly expensive, but I think the city itself probably facilitated where those got printed. But I think
Thank
it was
you.
through the Historic Commission. So
Yes, thank you. I had totally forgotten that she had reached out about that.
and she's scoured, she's hunted around for extras, and it seems like everybody is low or out around, you know, City Hall and anywhere else. So
Okay. I feel like that walking tour is online somewhere, but I can't remember where right now.
I agree.
It might even be on our website. So let me, yeah, thank you for reminding me. I'll dig and see if I can find it first. And then if I can't, then Tom, I'll probably reach out to you to see if we can find it in the city's files.
Sure.
And then just get some an estimate for how that should be printed. I should probably get approval before I would, but we can talk about adding that into our budget. Thank you. Is there something else, Jenna?
It's hard without taking us on a tangent. For the trees thing, just, you know, I know I've already gone down this path once tonight, but also, so, you know, we're working on the Mill Street School project, and those two big, amazing maple trees out front that have been there. There's a picture of those trees in 1912, and they were already quite large. So I don't know how old they are, but probably pre-1900, probably 1885 or something would be my guess, 1890. But I've had a tree guy look at them. They're real suspect, and I have no final conclusion on it, but I think they are probably not going to be around much longer. And perhaps like even prior to next spring, they will be maybe removed. There is like no wood left. So anyhow, as part of this preemptive concern of mine, we gathered a bunch of the helicopters before it got too cold and rainy. And so I have in my refrigerator at work, like a bunch of helicopters that we've dried and like saved and put in a bag, and they're in the drawer, and like, with the idea that we could use them, like baggy them and like put a little note in there or picture or something, and like do a little fundraising thing to sell these like heritage tree seeds, you know, like from these trees that were really cool and historic. So
Cool.
put that in your brain.
Yeah, I like that. That's going to be one of the natural parts of the heritage tree program. Is there's certain species of trees that just don't live beyond 100 years. So I think the point is to try to get them to last as long as possible, but at some point they just don't live that much longer. Maple's one of those, I believe, that doesn't get, and it's impressive to have an over 100-year-old maple. And sometimes they'll like rejuvenate from their roots once parts of it dies back, but that's probably not the location where you want that to happen, like in an urban area.
The big problem is that they have huge holes, and they've compensated by growing extra growth along the Mill Street side and down into the root structure there, which is all going to be completely destroyed with the Mill Street reconstruction project. And so they're very leany towards the building kind of already and splitting, and then that's just gonna, I think, doom them.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I was thinking maybe this little fundraiser could help support our medallion program for trees. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that's great. Very creative. All right. We can write that into our next work plan. Save helicopters. Do you guys know what she means by helicopters? Okay, good. All right, so the last items there in the work plan, just to kind of wrap this up. These would be future projects we don't have a whole lot of structure around or funding ideas for at this point, but just putting it down there so we can think about it later. The landscape survey ties into kind of the tree heritage thing. So inventory of the landscape of the Washburn district. Expanding the awards program towards include trees maybe, or other things. We talked about that. Mailing of education materials. I think that ties into awards. Was there something else that I'm forgetting right now that would include? Anybody?
Yes, we were going to mail the nomination form for the awards. And then we were also going to at one point mail the actual cards, but then we decided to pull back on that. Right.
The postcards.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did one mailing, Jenna said, but then the other one was included in the magazine.
Yeah, and the mailing we did this spring of the postcards included the like notification about the Heritage Awards. We managed to like get that all in there.
Yeah. Well timed.
But for this next Heritage Awards cycle, it would be good to do maybe another mailing of just a letter, I guess.
Yeah, we
Or-
should think about just having like a standing mailing that we're doing and trying to capitalize on anything that we can include it, and just know that that deadline's coming.
Mhm.
Kind of center it on our awards program and then try to get any other information we want included into that.
It'd be nice to format like a one pager front and back or something that highlights last year's winners, like a
Oh, yeah.
little synopsis and a photo or something, just celebrating last year's winners. And then maybe the call for entries for this year.
That's a great idea. Awesome. All right, I'm gonna keep running through these. What else do we have on there? Funds for local built projects. And so thinking about some areas have small grant programs, and there is a whole process we would need to go through with SHPO to establish something so that we can do this. So we're not becoming a re-granting our funds. But there are funds. I saw some for Albany. There's some all over the Portland metro area. A lot of different communities have small like funds available for, someone wants to replace a window and we're asking them to restore it. We'll give you, there's this grant available. You can get $500 or whatever that, or $200 even to like go towards helping you do that. Yeah.
I was thinking about that today, as I was going through the work plan. We might, to my knowledge, we've never done it. We might look at seeing, I don't know if it's possible, but if we could get any community development block grant funds for that. I know I looked it up, and that HUD does have like historic preservation as part of the community development block grants, and that might be an easier way to fund some of those restoration projects. So that's kind of all
Yeah.
CBDG does.
Yeah, I saw that too. That's a good point. Maybe finding an extra funding source to help support that. And maybe what we could do is actually call Albany and a couple other folks that are doing it and see where they get their funds from. And just try to not
I think-
recreate the wheel.
I think Eugene had a program like that at one time. I don't know if they still do or whether it's funded. One of the things we might want to look out for in considering money from HUD is that federal funding would come with additional compliance requirements. Doesn't mean we couldn't figure it out, but it's just something to keep in mind when we're looking at federal funding instead of state.
Yeah, thank you. We definitely don't have endless amount of support for our group. We are support limited as far as the time that we all have to manage. these.
Yeah, it would be a learning curve. I have faith in us.
Unless somebody here, maybe one of our new members too, has federal grant experience and is excited about that. But yeah, good point. Thank you. Other things we talked about is some other education and outreach specifically to Washburn residents, but all of Springfield. We've talked about doing like pub nights or, having a host speaker at, the museum or Planktown or something like that, and kind of a rotating topic that people could present on. And we could also do that virtually. Potentially, we've talked about bring in trainers to help provide education to the community-wide and the counselors and city staff and ourselves as well. Looking at partner with a museum a little bit more, trying to amplify awareness of skilled trades. And so people who are actually doing the preservation work and what their skills are, and trying to help increase education, support potential opportunities for exposing kids to those, and increase excitement around that skill set, those trades. Consultant support for community input on historic sites. So part of that comes into the preservation plan, but there is an element of having to do some community outreach and engagement. And there would probably be a need to bring in a consultant to do some education and engagement. And we would have to be probably a little further along than we are right now. I've been told by the state to be ready to do that, but we are making really good progress. And so the hope would be at some point we could kind of work with the city to do some community engagement around historic preservation and build some excitement around it, because I think that's part of the preservation planning process. We could consider some additional sites, assessments and studies, look at the boundary of the Washburn Historic District. Does it make sense the way that it is right now? Does it need to be expanded? What about downtown? Do we need an additional district? But there might be other areas where an additional district might be desirable as well. And then I think I kind of covered it. Yeah. So that pretty much took the whole 45 minutes to go through it, but I feel like it was helpful because we haven't really come back to visit this work plan since in the last 6 months, and this is good timing. So what we're looking at right now, just budget wise, we have, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but we applied for about $10,000 for the CLG funds and we were granted $15,700. So they were really excited about our projects. They had some extra funds, and so they just gave us the extra money. So I've been told by the state that we need to spend our money. And the last few grant cycles, we've had various turnover and newness, and it's been challenging, and we haven't used all of our funds and had to return some of them. And so I don't think the state can do anything with those at that point, and it's lost money. So they really want to see us spend our funds. There is flexibility for us to use our funds, like transition from one to the other. I just need to work with Curry to make sure that we're doing that properly. So where I really want to go with us as a commission is looking at this kind of budget for the projects that we have adopted for 2022 to take on and what we are planning to spend on those. So in 2022, yes, Brian.
So I was gonna make a motion, so keep going.
You're so good. In 2022, we budgeted a certain amount. We got additional CLG funds, just explaining I'm not an accountant finance person, so I have to explain to you my process here. And then we have a new budget. So right now, this is kind of what I have penciled in for us to spend. We don't know, there's big question marks here. We don't know if the reconnaissance level survey is going to happen. We might have $4,500 freed up in our budget from that project alone. Our application review, our consultant support, I think we're probably in good shape on that. Whatever she doesn't use, we can spend out at the end of our grant cycle and pay her in advance, so we can basically store those hours for future use. That's what we did last time. For the awards program, I think we're going to be slightly under budget, but it looks like we can probably find a way to use those funds for that project. Supporting partner efforts. So far, we have William Moline on the table with a request, but we don't have others. So we need to decide how we're going to move forward on that. We have purchased the historicfunding.com. So we spent that $85. And we do have a membership to the National Trust for Historic Preservation. We do have that membership, which makes us eligible to apply for additional grants, but we have spent that money. And then we do have some expenses in the postcards and none in training so far. So as you can see, we have spent some funds, but we still have a long ways to go, and we need to spend some money in the next 6 months. So Brian.
I would like to move to allocate an additional $3,000 from line item 4, the support partner efforts line item, to support the RLS for the Gray Jaqua house. The two other projects we listed as potentials for this. One is the admin building. We've practically begged Springfield School District to partner with us, and we've got nothing from them. And then the other option was the First Black Church in Glenwood. I looked it up. It's actually outside the city boundary, so it's not part of incorporated Glenwood. It's in the UGB, but on GIS, it is not part of the city.
Oh.
And And so given the city attorney's concern about us even touching a bridge that wasn't entirely in the city boundary, I would be a little surprised to hear that they would be okay with us spending on a property entirely outside of the city. And also it's owned by Lane County, so it's still a government partnership that we would have to go through. So that's why I'm making this motion to just spend the remainder that we have to spend within the next 8 months, basically, to support William Lane.
All right, so as far as just clarification on that, before we put that out for a vote. The other project you're talking about, the historic Black Church in Glenwood, is different than the Hayden Bridge, which is out East Springfield, which is outside of city limits.
And so is they are on opposite ends, but
Yeah.
they're both outside of the
Outside
city.
of city limits. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we were talking about two different things. Okay, great. Thanks for doing that research. I hadn't looked at that yet. Would anybody else like to second the motion? I am abstaining.
I just want to chime in briefly for the school. So the school district building is not owned by the school district anymore. You know that. Great. So our clients are actually pursuing National Historic Registration for their project and would still be interested in probably some support on that. But I also do think the William Lane project is, you know, very worthy. And it seems like there may be additional opportunities to shuffle some funds if we need to. If we are not able to spend them on some of these other items. So yeah, just putting that out there. But I also am in a weird, awkward position of, you know, being involved. So.
Is that something that they could put a proposal, like that's one thing that we haven't developed yet as an official process for people to submit, but I think attending a meeting and stating a request at one of our meetings is a good starting point for us. Is that something that they would be willing to do, Jenna?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion. Your motion was, sorry, to approve $3,000 in addition to the $1,000 request for William Lane. And is there a second, or do we want to pause on this until next month?
I'd second it.
Kirkwood.
Yeah.
Okay. All in
But
favor?
I guess if we need to pause, is there a reason, you know, but I think it's fine. So I second it, I guess.
Okay, thanks, Kirkwood. Charlotte, do you want to state any opinions on that before we take a?
I think both of those projects are worthwhile. So yeah, I'm undecided, I guess.
Okay. I think, Brian, yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna circle back to what Commissioner Philby said, that I think there's so much money and that RLS is so up in the air right now that we might end up coming back in January and having $7,500 to spend. And I think letting William Lane know that they're gonna get some support and that they get to move forward with this project sooner, at least, but knowing before the holidays, I think is beneficial because you can come back at the beginning of the year and be ready and not have to wait until the second Tuesday. So that's why I think now is good, even though we talked about potentially not making a decision today.
All right, so can you all remind me, this chair thing is like not my area of expertise. So if we get 2 votes for and there's 2 unsure, do we need quorum to vote, or do we need 2 and then anybody all in favor, anybody opposed?
The city code says that you need quorum is a majority of the commission. And then
Voting.
once voting, then it takes a majority of those members voting to pass.
Yeah. So we have 4 people and 2 people are voting for it. Because we have 4 voting people here today. And I'm not saying that, you know, obviously Jenna and Charlotte are in favor of the project. I'm wondering if maybe we want to postpone. And until we have additional information about other areas of our budget, so we can sit down and have a more realistic review of what available funds we do have, so that we can, it sounds like there's interest in making sure there's some funds available for other partners in the community.
I would
Well,
also like to research more about the church site. Just to confirm, because I think the issue with the Hayden Bridge site was not the city limits, it's that it's on the outside of the urban growth boundary, like it crosses between actual city urban growth boundary and the county. Whereas I think the church is just, it may not be annexed within the city, but it's well within the urban growth boundary. Yeah.
Okay. Kirk, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, maybe we should. I'm not, you brought up some good points that if we don't really know, maybe we do need more information. Yes, it would be good if we had it ready by January, but, it makes good sense to wait also, so I'll,
Okay,
I would, whatever the group favors, I think that's certainly sounds good to me.
okay, thanks. Brian, are you okay with that?
Yep, totally okay. I guess I would like to know what the city attorney's view would be on us spending inside the UGB, but outside the city limits.
Okay. Tom, can you help us figure that out?
Yes.
I think we asked that once before. I feel like when we were talking about Hayden Bridge, like what, I think it was mostly about whether or not we would have authority to
Receive the property.
yeah, receive the property, or grant an award even, you know, have any kind of oversight or like write a letter of support, because it's totally, we'd have to acknowledge that it's outside of our area of our purview, basically. So
Hey, can I say something real quick?
oh yeah, hi, sorry, I can't see you. Welcome.
Hi. So, I mean, while I understand not spending money in, Eugene for a Springfield related thing, I think when we think of sheer population of Lane County and what that looked like way back when, there wasn't much of a difference between Eugene and Springfield for Black people. I mean, they might have physically lived in those spaces, but it wasn't enough for them to really have their own communities. And so to me, that could be a talking point if you all were to move forward with doing anything around that church, just because, yeah, it might be in whatever it was called in Eugene in a sense, but how has it affected Springfield community? But then also there's a potential way to partner with, I mean, I would say the NAACP, but I don't know, somebody to, if you really want to spend that money, figure out a way to partner with somebody. That way it's a collaboration versus just you all doing it. But yeah, just to reiterate, I mean, when you think about even now, the Black population, it's impossible to separate Eugene from Springfield. And there has to be tons and tons of overlap, especially way back then when there's so few people.
Yeah. Thank you, Councilor Pitts, and thank you for being here. That's a great point. I think the question would be, what are our limitations in our ability to spend these funds? Like if we can, like our ability to maybe grant an award or something like that has to be within Springfield jurisdiction, but is it different when we have funds from the state? I don't know. Let's do some research on that and find out, because that's just the only thing I think we could get in a hiccup with is if the state has given us funds and they find out that we've utilized those funds in an improper manner, then we get them removed, and that would be the only concern on my end. All right, so here's what I have. We want to do more research on the Black Church in Glenwood. We want to do more research on the admin building and see if there's any requests there. We want to understand what has been spent in our budget so far, and Tom is working on that. And we only have 2 minutes left. Okay, I'm going to talk fast. And we want to understand, that should answer our, Jenna's going to let us know about the awards program, how much we've spent on that. Charlotte's looking into the reconnaissance level survey and trying to get us updated estimates to find out if that's even a possibility.
And on that note, I just got a message back from one of them asking if we can do a quick call tomorrow or Friday.
Okay.
So I'll try to set that up and do that myself unless you want to join Christina. Whichever.
Okay, yeah, I'll connect with you after the meeting and tell you my availability. Thank you,
Thanks.
Charlotte. Okay, so I think if we got those question marks kind of filled in by the next meeting, that would be really helpful to help guide kind of a revised budget, and then we could kind of vote on that as a revised approach for implementing those next phase of the project. Does that sound okay, reasonable to everybody?
Mhm.
Okay. Last thing I want to make sure I touch on before we have to go. It's 6 o'clock. We have Leslie has stepped down. I mentioned that earlier. So right now I am still kind of filling this chair role. My time is limited because I am timing out in 2023. So I think it's very timely that we have a conversation about who else might be willing to help step into some leadership roles. I would like to focus my next 6 months to a year, whatever I have left, on working with somebody who might be interested in taking some leadership on the commission and helping set them up for success, because we don't have a lot of documentation and institutional knowledge amongst us. We've had so much turnover as it is. And so I want to make sure I'm setting people up for success. That's my whole idea. Would like get a work plan established. Let's try to create some structure for ourselves so that we don't have to recreate the wheel every time somebody leaves. Yes, Brian.
Sorry to do this over time. I know that in the code, it says we elect officers at the beginning of each calendar year. Are we planning on doing that in January, even though it's subs only?
Yes, I say it would be very timely. That's what kind of where I was going with this, is I think that next month we should also plan to add to the agenda that, and I would be open to any recommendations between now and then on how to structure that. In the past, we've had a chair and a vice chair, and we could continue in that manner. We could also consider maybe 2 chairs, like co-chairs. I don't know if there's anything we can't do that.
Is this chair and chair and a vice chairperson?
Okay, well, I see how that could function as well. That's how we've always done it. I was trying to be creative about it because so far that hasn't, and the vice, Leslie was excellent to work with. She is trying to participate as much as she could. But yeah, often the vice chair role is very passive, kind of just filling in as the chair is busy, and we are all very busy. And so that naturally is kind of how it works. But it would be great to have an active vice chair, I guess, is where I'm leaning towards, so somebody that's interested in maybe stepping into leadership and able to help take on some of the leadership, so that I'm hoping to try to get things like the handbook and everything in place, so I can just have that ready before I have to leave and step down for a year.
So Christina, can you clarify?
Yeah.
Are you leaving?
Well, my time is up. I'm timed out. I have to be gone. I have to step down from the commission for a year before I could be reappointed per code.
What is that time limit?
8 years, I think, at terms, but I filled in for somebody else. So I think I'm at like 6 or 7, but I finished their term, so. Yeah. And Jenna is gonna be reappointed hopefully in January as well.
End of March, I believe, the council extended through the end of the first quarter, which we interpreted as March 31st. So you're good until then, and then they'll do another spring kind of cohort of interviews.
Oh, great. So we could bring on another commissioner then too.
Great.
Start recruiting. Okay. Excellent. I don't want to keep people longer than necessary. And I know sometimes I just send out an email with some follow-up notes. Does anybody have a comment they need to make before we close the meeting? I would like to.
Just a big welcome to the new folks. It's good to
Yeah.
have you here.
I have
Jamie.
one comment. Yeah, so, well, this is my last meeting. I'm done January 2nd, so thank you all. Tomorrow, myself, Councilor Riley, and Councilor Stair are meeting with Mary Bridget because, you know, and I've talked to many of you before about how the structure and roles of people within boards and commissions are very confusing, and they're not uniform, and that could be a reason that people do step away or people don't, you know, but, you know, so tomorrow we're having a meeting. If you have any recommendations based on this, based on what you've seen, based on what you do like and don't like, feel free to email me. And even if it's not by tomorrow, which I mean, it's already 6 something, we'll make sure that that gets included in any of the talks that we have about how to restructure boards and commissions, how to make them more, you know, appeal. More have more appeal for various types of people, but then also how to define the roles of staff, council, as well as, you know, lines of communication between the chair, staff liaison, and the counselor. So.
Great. I'm writing notes here because I'm going to send this out in an email. Counselor Pitts, who should they send comments to? To you directly? Or
Yeah, they can send them to me, and I'll make sure that they get included. Like I said, I mean, as long as you get it to me by January 2nd, because after that, I'm done. But if not, and something comes up, I mean, you can email Councilor Stair, Councilor Rodley. I mean, matter of fact, you can email them now. It doesn't have to be to me. And then, yeah, we'll make sure that they get accounted for and that your information is input. I mean, and it can even be considered anonymous as well.
great. Thank you. I'll send out a follow-up email with some of the things we talked about, not tonight, but probably tomorrow, and I'll include that in there along with your email if it's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. All right. I have kept you all. Thank you, Councilor Pitts, for being here and for attending our meetings and helping direct and improve our process. All right.
Later.
Nice to have the new members. We'll see you all. We'll close the meeting. It's 6:07.